Hey guys, what is up? It's the Jedi in Exile guys here, and today's episode is very special. We've got one day until Kenobi. Let me hear you. How excited are you, Matthew?
Honestly, mate, I am like buzzing doesn't even come close. Is
Exactly, words can't describe.
it can't. I'm absolutely on edge.
Cracking. So today's episode is a little bit of a different one. We're giving you a little bit of information. So Star Wars nerds and people who follow Star Wars all over the universe will probably know a lot about what we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about the Inquisitors. Now, some people won't know who the Inquisitors are. There'll be people who have just watched the main Star Wars films, won't have seen any of the animated series or Clone Wars Rebels, maybe won't have played the games where these guys appear. So today's episode is almost like an Inquisitors 101. Who are they? Where did they come from? How do they fit into the storyline? So we're going to be talking you through for the next sort of 5-10 minutes, giving you an overview so that when you watch Kenobi, you can think, so that's how they fit in. So Matthew, talk to me. First of all, Inquisitors, who are they?
Okay, so the Inquisitors are essentially a force that have been pulled together by the Empire um, of force-sensitive beings. They come from various places, and we'll get into that a little bit. But force-sensitive beings who aren't Sith as such, but they are kind of dark side users, and they're essentially like a kind of like a police force, an intergalactic police force, let's call it. It's like a squad of people trained by Vader to essentially hunt down any Jedi that survived Order 66, and not only any Jedi that survived Order 66, but any Force sensitive beings that potentially could pose a threat to the Empire.
Yeah, so it's really important. Their main task is to hunt Jedi, isn't it? And that's where we've seen on the Kenobi trailer that you can see that they're in looks like Tatooine. You can see Uncle Owen is in the trailer talking to these Inquisitors. Um, and yeah, it looks like it's going to be they're searching for Kenobi because the Empire knows he's still alive. And the Inquisitors, I think they're a really cool character. So the Grand Inquisitor, which is the one in the middle there on the photo of the people watching on YouTube, he was first introduced in the Rebels series as kind of the main villain throughout the first two seasons, really. Um, and he's where it's introduced. You can see again the photo here with the lightsaber, the double-ended lightsaber, which of course we're not new to. We know Darth Maul had that, but it's a spinning one, which again is something that we've not really seen in a lot of Star Wars media. Um, so the Grand Inquisitor, there's you'll hear different names thrown out. So the second sister, the ninth sister, the fifth brother. So they call themselves brothers and sisters. The Grand Inquisitor was a Jedi Temple guard. So we find this out in Rebels that he's had some Force training but isn't a full Jedi. So he used to guard the Jedi Temple, which I suppose is like a security guard um, defending a gym for bodybuilders. It's like basically pointless. But we find out in the story that he resents the Jedi and was turned to the dark side. And I suppose they are just dark Jedi, aren't they? They're not quite. They're not Sith Lords. We know that there can only be two Sith Lords, a Master and an Apprentice.
Yeah.
But I think this kind of has followed on from like the Force Unleashed games, where we had Vader's apprentice who hunted down Jedi. That idea has been kind of taken and just expanded on.
Yeah, so
Um,
I think there's always kind of been this concept of dark side or evil kind of pawns that the two Sith use for kind of reaching their own their own goals. So we saw it with kind of Ventress being kind of Count Dooku's apprentice, but not really a Sith and never gonna be a Sith. And to some extent, the way that Maul was used by Sidious and Plagueis. So that kind of concept isn't new, But yeah, it's really important to kind of make this distinction that they're not Sith in by any means. They are purely kind of dark side users, and essentially the way that this all comes about, and it's expanded upon in the comics a little bit. There's a comic book run that goes into a little bit more depth than we see in Rebels and in Fallen Order, and we'll come on to Fallen Order in a second. But it's kind of explained that these were Sidious's idea in the first place. These guys having this kind of force was Sidious's idea. And Vader actually really doesn't like the thought of the Inquisitors because he thinks that he can do it all himself. But Sidious actually asks Vader to go and train them and essentially like head them up. And that's explored in the comics quite a bit, but that was also potentially going to play into some of how we see Kenobi shape up as well.
Yeah, it's exciting because I think it's the Kenobi show. As much as we want to see as much of Darth Vader as we can, Darth Vader needs to be seen as like he only steps in. He doesn't just go and hunt like ex Jedi apprentices. Like that's beneath him. So he sends out, like you say, his pawns to do the kind of dirty work and the groundwork, and then it's the Jedi like Kenobi, who we've got to remember is a Jedi Master from the Council. It's the the Jedi like Yoda. That's when Darth Vader is like, right, Darth Vader's powerful. We need to send him out because I don't think we've really seen a powerful Darth Vader in any real media, have we? We've seen
The
him in
closest
the old
we
films.
get is the scene in Rogue One at the very end where he's just kind of cutting people down left, right, and center, right?
Best scene in Star Wars, hands down. But yeah, that's the only time that Vader's power is kind of teased. But we have to remember this guy's feared throughout the galaxy, feared probably more than the Emperor, because the Emperor doesn't need to use any force, because he never has to get involved, whereas Vader is the one on the ground doing all of that work. So yeah, it's I think the Inquisitors are going to be we're going to see a lot more of the Inquisitors, I think, than we're going to see of Vader.
Yeah, completely. And I guess that the fundamental thing to look at here is these guys are hunters. That's kind of the whole concept. Now they we see in Rebels that some of them aren't necessarily as good at what they think they're good at as they think they are, if that makes sense. Because we see kind of Ahsoka come in and take them on, and we see some stuff with Maul. But I think that's the really important thing to note here is it's not just Jedi. It's any force-sensitive threat to the Empire or potential threat to the
Yeah,
Empire.
someone rising up.
So they go out and they hunt down Maul because he's still out there, force sensitive, and potentially could pose a threat to the Empire.
No, could we get Ray Parks back as Darth Maul at some point?
Well, it was teased in Solo. We just
The
never.
fact that the producers have come and specifically said there's no Darth Maul scenes means there's definitely
There's
Darth
probably
Maul
Darth Maul
scenes.
scenes. There's very likely to be Darth Maul scenes. Um,
Yeah,
but that's essentially the information we have about these guys, right? And like you said,
yeah.
they all belong to this order, and completely are stripped of their identity. Typical Empire style. They're stripped of their identity. They become numbers rather than names. And they are pawns. They're the grunts on the ground, slightly higher than your stormtroopers and all of that, but they are literally there to hunt these guys down. And all I'm going to tell you is we've seen them in various kind of guises, right? So Rebels was the first place they were really kind of brought in, and we got the backstory of the Grand Inquisitor. A lot of them we don't know very much about. One of the places that we do find out a little bit more about them is Fallen Order.
Which is the game that came out, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that's the game, and you can see two of them there. That's the ninth sister and the second sister, and we find out that one of them was a Padawan, a Jedi Padawan, that again has been turned to the dark side. So it's kind of a recurring theme here is they kind of spot vulnerabilities, and they have and again, it's introduced in Fallen Order, and it's been teased in the Kenobi trailer. They have this kind of palace training academy that I think we're going to see a little bit more of. I think there's some scenes in the trailer that seem to be from inside it that will get explored in Kenobi a little bit. But fundamentally, these guys were brought in when the Empire took over, and we actually, up to this point, don't know if they're still around when... obviously, we know they're around kind of around the time of A New Hope, because we know that they're around during the Rebel series, which kind of leads into that part of the timeline. But we don't know how much longer or how much further into the timeline these guys expand. So there are quite a lot of question marks here, and there's quite a lot that we don't know about who they are, how many of them there are.
We'd have to kind of assume that as the Rebel Alliance gets stronger, that the Empire's direction is probably turned more towards stopping the Rebel Alliance instead of stopping Jedi.
Yeah,
they've got to see what is the biggest threat.
And I guess there's two ways. There's two ways to look at that, right? Because one of the things that you've got to look at is why, if they were still around during the original trilogy, like during the main bulk of the original trilogy, why do we not see them anywhere near Luke or get any sniff of them hunting Luke? But maybe that's because Vader was handling it himself, because he obviously was. So there's every possibility that they were still around at that point, and the reason that we don't see them is because the only Force sensitive that is anything to do with the rebellion within the original trilogy movies and the scenes that we see within the original trilogy is Luke. So there is every possibility they're still out there, and there's every possibility that they're still out there during the kind of the transition between Empire and First Order. We just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's an exciting time to see. I mean, I would say that they were made a bit redundant. The Empire thinks they got rid of all the Jedi, or that they're not a threat anymore, um, because Luke is seen as the Jedi's last hope. That he is the last of the Jedi until the sequels come and obviously bash that. Um, so yeah, I'm just really really excited.
Do you know what I'm excited to see? I'm really excited to see that throughout everything that I've seen in the comics, and don't get me wrong, I don't pretend to have read everything that there is on these guys within the comics, but from everything I've seen in the comics and from everything that we see in the books and the games and the TV shows, I think it's really important to say that one of them actually appears at the end of the Ahsoka novel. I'm not going to give spoilers away, but there is an encounter at the end of Ahsoka which is quite important and quite pivotal to that story. That throughout all of it, it's made really clear that as much as they're called sister and brother, it's used in a very, very different term and a different way to the way that the clones use it, where they're kind of fighting for their brothers.
These
And it's
guys are in competition with
yeah,
each other.
100%. So all of these guys see it as a way of, if they prove themselves, they essentially can be the new Vader. That is the and actually one of them, and I don't remember exactly which one it was, but in one of the comics, essentially allows they're escorting Vader while Vader's hunting someone down, and they essentially allow Vader to walk into a trap that they know is gonna happen, because they're like, well, if Vader dies, there's a gap for me to fill.
Middle management.
Exactly. So
I just want to see the one thing. I want to see Barra Sophie. I want to see if she's involved somewhere, which the Star Wars nerds and fans will know that she's like a fallen Jedi from the end of the Clone Wars series. So
we don't know what
just be
happens
like
to her.
Dave Filoni exactly, and it would be, just like him to bring a character from Clone Wars. He loves bringing characters from Clone Wars into live action.
Yeah, I mean, there is every possibility that she becomes one of the Inquisitors. We just don't know, and that's why this video is really cool for you guys, because we've kind of given you enough that if you want to now go watch Kenobi without having watched Rebels, without having played Fallen Order, without kind of keeping up with all of that stuff, you kind of know who they are, what they do, and why they're there. But also, what we need to appreciate as fans is that there's very little about these guys And there's so much to be filled in, and I really think that this is potentially where we're going to get some of that, because even though it's called Kenobi and it's going to be about Kenobi, we know that some of the Inquisitors are like main characters, and therefore we are going to get scenes where it's them and nothing to do with Obi-Wan, and so they're going to expand on all this stuff. So really exciting times, really interested. Like Brian says, we are less than 24 hours by the time this video goes up, less than 24 hours away from the double bill first 2 episodes of Kenobi. If you guys don't want to miss that, then make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, be around, keep an eye on the channel, hit that notification bell, then you won't miss any of our videos.
Exactly.
But we are going to be doing reactions like we did to Boba Fett. Say reactions, kind of reactions, review, kind of little Easter eggs and kind of things that we found interesting about the show and all of that kind of stuff. And I can tell you for free right now, this is an It's Tats guarantee. It's going to be a banger for the first 2 episodes of Kenobi. It's going to be. We know it's going to be. So make sure to keep your eyes peeled. Other than that, guys, all that is left to say is we'll see you all really soon in the next one for the Kenobi video.
May the Force be with you.